and the plot. Not to make it sound like it's too heady or anything. So what was the pitch? How did they persuade you to do this?
That's a good question. It was, I said no for 30 plus years to very lame pitches, but this was John Hurwitz, Hayden Schlossberg, and Josh Heald. They had written the Harold and Kumar franchise, Hot Tub Time Machine, and they were as passionate and as focused as any three. They share one brain. They pitched me. I was the last guy to come to the party, from what I understand. They had everything lined up, and it was about, because I guess it was notoriously no. Why taint the legacy of that film? And I was very protective of the character and the movie. They are the fan base. They were the guys that saw this movie a zillion times, big-time Karate Kid fans, know way more than I do about it, and they just wanted to make the show that they wanted to see. And they had a very specific angle from coming in through the eyes of Johnny Lawrence, portrayed by William Zabka, and whatever happened to that guy, and then how LaRusso, my character, would come into that world 35 years later, and where they would be, and dive into the gray areas of these characters that we grew up with, but allow them to breathe in a way that a 5-hour movie would, cut up into 10 half-hour parts. So that, coupled with the fact that they listened to my thoughts about what I'd like to be infused in the show, the Miyagi elements all woven throughout, that the rivalry concept made sense as long as the heart, soul, and magic that was in the Karate Kid film is still finds its way peppered throughout the series, and I think that's part of what we've been able to accomplish.
Oh yeah, I'd say so. I'd say the Miyagi thread is extremely important.
Yeah,
it grounds the whole thing, grounds you.
It does. It's important. And listen, it's all about what? It's about finding balance in your life, losing balance, and refinding it, recalibrating yourself, and navigating through midlife now for these characters. And they just do a great job of tying in the nostalgia, that comfort food that is the movie or the stories of the characters that we grew up with, yet telling a story for a fresh, relevant now generation. And that's what we've been able to pull off.
Well, I would say so far you haven't. The critics apparently agree with me.
Yeah, it's done very, very well, and it's exciting. It is really exciting.
I'm impressed with the way they're able to incorporate the nostalgia, like the 80s music, with very relevant, immediate stories. It incorporates a lot of flashback and callback at the same time.
Right.
And a lot of that stuff works very, very well. I'd say that the two flashback, callback situations that were most affecting to me were the things with Allie, although I miss Elizabeth Shue not being on screen, and your stuff with Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah, well, it's the heart. I mean, that's the thing. That's what I alluded to before. It was important that, the concept of Cobra Kai and Johnny Lawrence and LaRusso and the fact that they push each other's buttons and are each other's arch enemy, nemesis. It's really the foundation of the characters and the heart and soul of what made the Karate Kid what it is and stand this test of time still has to be woven throughout this show. Those moments you mentioned, the one with Allie, where Johnny Lawrence is telling his young student, why you need to stay away from LaRusso because this is what happened to me, and he tells his story of that summer, where we've seen in the original Karate Kid film from the Daniel LaRusso perspective. Now you flip the prism of that. It's the same exact events, just told from another perspective. That's what John, Josh, and Hayden do so well with this show. And then the use of footage that we get, that we have access to from Sony, Columbia Pictures at the time. There's footage in Cobra Kai that we shot in '83 for the Karate Kid film that may not have gotten into the film, or certain shots that weren't used. So it's so much fun to be able to go back and layer those in, because you still feel it's fresh. And now, when it's 35 years ago, and yet you're dealing, on the flip side, you're dealing with elements such as bullying, parenting, mentoring, and that are all relevant subject matters to a generation today. So that's what that seems to be what helps all elements come together.
Yeah, I definitely want to get to the themes because the themes feel sincere and they feel deeply rooted. But you touched on some interesting stuff there, especially when you were talking about this being like a 5-hour movie. It's broken into 10
Yeah,
pieces.
well, that's what, you get to do that with these stream, like a YouTube Premium, and you get to, if you're making a traditional movie sequel, you have 2 hours and you have to get to that climax, and it's got to be bigger, faster, louder, and crazier than the first time. So you don't get to, it's tougher to dive into the characters, into the, like I say, the gray areas of the flaws and the moral ambiguity between both of these men and some of the younger cast of the show. So that's kind of cool to get to do that in that format, because we do shoot each season as a long movie.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that this lengthy narrative allows you guys to show many sides of these characters. The example with Johnny's view of what happened with Allie, that's like a pristine example of that.
Right.
It's all about perspective and learning the backgrounds of these people that we couldn't possibly do in a single movie.
Right, exactly. And even just like you alluded to, the Miyagi scene is episode 5, going to Miyagi's gravesite.
Right.
And it was important to have that moment, and it's an important shift. It's the end of that season 1 mid-season finale where LaRusso is about to shift his life and fill that void of martial arts that's been gone for 8 years, and how he's going to dust it all off and bring it all back. And it's a really, it's a really goosebumpy kind of moment in this, show that touches on all different tones, comedy as well as drama. And it's funny when people say, "Is it a half hour? It's a half-hour comedy, or it's a drama?" It's an hour drama. It's not. It's yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah. Might have to call it a drama with comic elements.
Yeah, I mean they do. It was dramedy was the old '80s term for those hour shows with laugh tracks. But it's another world. You have your content is not as categorized. Categorized.
Right.
Until award season, then it's like, is it a comedy or is it a drama?
There you go. I'm glad you brought up that scene, because I think that scene is lovely at the grave.
Thank you.
That's yet again to juxtapose this with a 2-hour movie. That's the kind of scene that in a 2-hour movie often feels kind of tossed off. We have to establish that Miyagi's dead and he's sad about it. But in this, it felt earned.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was beautiful, and it felt like it was going to lead to something. Which
and it was timed. It was timed right in the arc of the story.
Yeah. The show actually has a few touching moments. A lot of them having to do with the father and son theme that clearly runs through it.
Yeah, and listen, Karate Kid was surrogate father-son.
It sure was. Yeah.
So those themes are important to carry through, and that's when you're telling a new story or taking something like this. You don't want to abandon what brought you to the party, but yet you need to make it fresh and relevant, and feel like now entertainment and not, a nostalgic throwback. Somehow, so far, we've been able to pull that off.
Yeah, well, you certainly have the now technological side of it.
Yeah.
And the fish out of water thing, especially with Johnny, is
Yeah,
getting a
it's great.
computer
And
for the first time.
the non-politically correct. He gets to say all the things we're not allowed to say anymore. It's just a lot of fun to watch. He does a great job with all that stuff.
He's very much a bull in a china shop that way. You're an EP on this?
Co-EP.
So how hands-on are you? What do you do?
It's very collaborative. It really is. John, Josh, and Hayden write the show. We, every script I get, if I see something that I have a thought on, I send it. I'll either have a conversation with them or I'll send an email. And it's mostly with my character, but sometimes with other characters. If I see, and usually it sheds light and for the most part heightens the scene or whatever element. They, because they're balancing so much. We're shooting at such a fast pace. We do not have a big, enormous, fat budget. There's not a minute wasted. We are shooting 5 days per 36, 37 pages, which is very ambitious. And I think going forward, if we're so blessed, I think we're going to have a little bit more room to play with because you have action sequences and certainly in season 2 it's not Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's not two people at a diner in a single camera show. Meanwhile, I named that show because it's one of my favorites of all time, but it's a handful of characters. You don't have a high school full of fight scenes. You know what I mean? So when I give notes or I have thoughts, they come from a place of just trying to keep the eye on the prize. And then at the end of the day, they get the tiebreaker. It's their vision. Been very few times where we've disagreed. Season 1 more because I didn't know what the show was actually going to be. Once I saw the full season, then it was much easier to say, okay, I see where they're going. First, I was so protective of LaRusso's character and of the film franchise. I wanted to make sure we weren't trivializing something or making less than or parodying anything, because I hold it to a certain standard. You know, it's a big part of my life.
You better hold to a certain standard. It was just funny when you mentioned Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's just like that, but with way more punching and kicking.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. There's the pitch.
Especially a scene that we can't talk about that is one of the biggest action scenes I've seen in a while.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Made my head spin a little bit there. So you're 57 now?
Yeah, say it. Say it loud.
57. He's 57.
Say it loud, say it proud.
If you've seen the show and you see what he's doing at 57, I think people like me are going, what? How?
It hurts. A lot of stretching. A lot of stretching necessary. Yeah, it's funny when the show was pitched to me, I was saying to myself, all right, so maybe I'll have to do a little of this, a little of that, but all the kids are going to do all this. They'll get all the young generation to do, which they do. The kids in the show, we have a spectacular young cast in this show. I'm so proud of these guys. They really come to work every day, do not take it for granted, feel like they are the lucky ones that get to carry on the torch and enhance this storyline. It's really wonderful to work with young actors like that. But they do, a lot of physical stuff and not with the time that you normally would need to do it the right way. We're pulling it off. We have a spectacular stunt coordinator, Hiro Koda. If he doesn't win the Emmy this year, I am going to go insane.
Yeah, how he didn't
it's
win
really
last year.
spectacular, the work he's done. But Billy and I and Martin Cove in season 2, we're touching our toes, we're stretching, Advil and or ibuprofen and a lot of water and take care of yourself. It's tough. It's tough to bounce back.
7 or 8 pages a day with those kind of fight scenes. I mean,
Yeah, it's tough. Sometimes they're just saying, okay, we're going to put the camera here, start doing stuff. Meanwhile, when we made The Karate Kid, we had like 2.5 months of every day. It was like a ballet, those scenes. And the great John Avildsen, who directed Rocky and The Karate Kid, knew how to tell those underdog stories.
He did okay.
He did okay.
So did you keep up with karate in the interim, or was it?
I kind of, after I got done with the movies, it was time to stop getting kicked for a moment. I've always appreciated the philosophy. I've carried on more than the physical aspect of the martial arts, because that philosophy and finding balance in your life and some of the the wisdom, the Miyagi-isms.
Yeah.
They're not just made up. It makes sense. I always say you walk left side, you're safe. You walk right side, you're safe. You walk down the middle, you're going to get squished like a grape, right? So there's a kind of, everyone laughs and smiles at the nostalgia of the Karate Kid quote. And when you think of in life, it's really about make a commitment and stay with it. Don't waffle. I've used that in my own life in parenting with my own kids.
Oh, great.
Why not? Why not? Make a decision, follow through on it, and be your own person and just stick with it.
Well, they must have seen the movies.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So how did they feel about seeing those movies and then hearing it from their dad?
Well, I think then they didn't. I just used it as it was. Oh, this is. I never copywrote Miyagi or the Karate Kid. I said, this is my idea. No, I think they've seen the movies. My kids are adults, but and that's one of the joys of Cobra Kai right now is how much they love this show, and their friends are watching it, and they do watch parties with their friends.
Oh, great!
Of a project that was born out of something that was so big out of my young life. It's awesome to. They're the best cheerleaders I have. It's really exciting.
something you said earlier just come back to me about how protective you were about it and how you were unsure of what it was going to be early on. Mm-hmm. Were you nervous about the way Daniel was being portrayed early? Because he's
a little bit lost his focus there and a little bit arrogant. Yes, I was. And there were many conversations with the writers up front. I said, listen, I get why it makes sense that LaRusso is the auto king of the San Fernando Valley, and he's on billboards and commercials, and he haunts and makes Johnny Lawrence's life miserable. I said, I understand that concept was probably thought of from the perspective of Lawrence and not necessarily from the perspective of LaRusso. So we have to find a balance here where I believe it makes sense and it's truthful. So then we spoke about him and his wife and where they met, and we also spoke about the old cars, the 47 Ford convertible, the wax-on, wax-off car, and how cars would be a place that would be a natural place for him to wind up. Initially that auto commercial was a little bit cheesier in the earlier incarnations of the script, or I don't want to say cheesier. We had to find the balance, if you will, with what I believe would be truthful to LaRusso and what would serve the Johnny Lawrence story in that first episode. Right. And then the show balances its way out, and certainly by the time we get to the Miyagi elements, if everything was wonderful, where everything Miyagi taught Daniel is infused in Daniel's life, and Johnny's just a jerk, you have no show. Right. So you need to say, here's a guy who was a bully, who was a jerk, who now is trying to redeem himself. And the thorn in his side is LaRusso. And for LaRusso, the fact that Cobra Kai is back only turns out to actually be the one thing that helps him get back into balancing himself and finding the Miyagi-isms in his wisdom and bringing it forward. What happens is, no matter what, these guys push each other's buttons and it all goes by the wayside because it's entertainment and it's fun to see them butt heads. It's also a lot of fun in witness of episode 9 of season 1, when they get together and have a few drinks and sing REO Speedwagon together.
Yeah, the bonding scenes.
The bonding stuff is great, and so going forward, I think it's as entertaining seeing them get along as the odd couple, as much as it's the two guys butting heads. So yeah, we're in it for the long haul. So the LaRusso side of it up front had more of an antagonistic quality, and then as it goes, that balances itself out.
I mean, it makes perfect sense when you break it down from the outside. We have to start Daniel from somewhere a little rough so that he can get to somewhere.
It's a little
balanced.
flip the script, he's in Reseda, Johnny Lawrence is in Reseda Down and Out, and LaRusso's in Encino, which is where Johnny Lawrence came from.
Yeah.
So that's all by design.
You still live there. Every time you guys are shooting around, like,
it's like, this
I
my
know
house.
That place, I know that.
That's
yeah,
right.
Okay, we were talking a little bit before that one of the primary themes of the series is fathers and sons in many different forms. I mean, we've got sons kind of being traded off among you guys. So is this something that was discussed outright, or you just found it in the script and said, yeah, that's what's happening?
We discussed that early on. I mean, bullying was a theme that was brought up early on. Mentorship, obviously. Fatherhood, the lack of a father, through LaRusso not having a dad and Miyagi being that filling that void in his life, and Johnny Lawrence not having a father around, and then Macrease. It's interesting. If they each found the other sensei, who would they have been?
Yeah.
They're not that far from each other, in a way. And those themes are, I love touching on those themes. I get to, both of my kids are, like I say, they're in their 20s now. So I'm a little bit older than LaRusso is. But I've experienced that. I look I almost just like the guy. But I get to use that experience that I've had as a parent and infuse that into the show and the wonderful scenes I have with Mary Mauser, who plays Samantha, and going forward, with my young son in the show, which is not quite developed yet to a place that we have ideas going forward when he gets a little bit older and dealing with that. And parenting is a difficult job, and it's not seasonal.
No.
People say it's time to have a kid. No, you're going to be a parent forever.
Yes.
And so I love that all those themes are relevant, and you're picking up on them, and you see, because that's what works. on the human side, on top of the pop culture of Cobra Kai, Miyagi, get him a body bag, and waxing cars and sanding decks.
Yeah, well, I mean to praise the show by saying that, because though your analogy of comfort food is really right on.
Yeah.
That it has those elements that people want and are familiar with and make them feel good. But then this thing is actually thought out, and these themes don't feel pasted on. They feel like they're part of the structure of the show.
Yeah, yeah. So.
But you're mentioning Sam brings me to a fan question. This is from actually one about Sam and Anthony from Slappy the Cobra.
Slappy the Cobra.
Slappy the Cobra, he or she asks, in the Cobra Kai universe, did Sam and Anthony meet Mr. Miyagi?
I believe that Sam definitely knew who Mr. Miyagi was. I think Anthony was too young to know Mr. Miyagi. I could do the math on that, but I think he probably met him, but Sam remembers him in some way, in a very young way. Because after Miyagi passed away, which is about 8 years from season 1, 8 years prior, Sam represented the peace for Daniel, because he trained with her in martial arts. He would train with his daughter, and you see that early in season 1, where he has that memory back to her, but she doesn't want it. She's now 16, and that was yesterday, and I'm embarrassing. And in season 2, we'll see that kind of comes full circle and is really kind of sweet and a nice moment early on in season 2 where well, it's not a surprise because the trailers are out there, where she comes and wants to train again, and it's really a nice moment.
Before I forget, I wanted to say something about the fathers and sons thing. You were talking about what would have happened if they had found the other mentors. I think one of the positive messages of the show is that with the mentors they had, even though they drift off from what they were taught, Daniel finds his way back positively to what Mr. Miyagi taught him, and he gets a lot of strength in that. And when Kreese comes back, it's destructive to Johnny.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. It's and on the same side of that coin, Daniel gets to, in season 2, he wants to spread that knowledge and that wisdom and the legacy of Miyagi to teach a better way, as opposed to what he finds as negative is the Cobra Kai aggressive style. Karate for defense only, and it's about showing a better way and not taking it down. But he learns is not everything is as easy as it seems, right? I mean, just because you have knowledge of a subject doesn't mean you can necessarily teach it. So those are the lumps that LaRusso has to find. He doesn't have that magic that Miyagi had. So how does he find his way to teach? And it's an interesting thing in season 2 because, we keep going back to the comfort food and the nostalgia and that warm and fuzzy familiarity that just fills us with the memories of what the Karate Kid is and all those 80s callbacks and elements. And this season has all that, and yet takes you on a journey and brings you to a place you never expect. Both characters have great intentions going in, but not everything works out that simply, and that's life.
Yeah, can't say how that manifests in season 2. Yeah,
but it's fun.
But it definitely goes somewhere different. Season 2 definitely goes in a different place than season 1 did, because season 1 felt like, especially the end of season 1, felt like
it was the setup too.
Here's that big tournament that we're all waiting for because it's a Karate Kid franchise thing.
Right.
And then season 2 says, okay, that happened. Now we're on to other stuff.
At least for now.
Now, another Sam question that came up from a fan that I really like this question. Dade B. Murphy says, Ralph, do you think we'll see Samantha spar with Julie from Next Karate Kid? Or will Julie ever make an appearance?
Well, Julie from Next Karate Kid is played by Hilary Swank, right? Well, there's a little bit of when you talk 35 years, that'll be an interesting spar. See, they're thinking that Julie is Hilary Swank of 19 whatever it was, where now that would be a. I don't think that they'll be sparring. I will say that anyone in that universe from any of those 4 films, including the last one reference that I wasn't in, I mean, did Daniel LaRusso know Julie, the Hilary Swank character? Of course he would have. We've never seen that. So that is still part of that universe.
Right.
And maybe she meant something at some point to Samantha. Could it be her godmother? I don't know. I'm just pulling stuff out of. But I'm saying all that when it works organically into the story, these three writers will figure out a way to make it fresh and awesome.
I was going to say the showrunners right now are watching this going,
Yeah, well, and it's all a canon for the show, and more Easter eggs are coming in season 2 and beyond. If we can, we have great ideas for any of those characters can show up.
look, I love Hilary Swank, but if you get her and you don't get Elizabeth Shue, I'm going to...
It's, yeah, I would listen, that's all yes, no, and maybe. All those conversations are going on. How it's going to land, I don't exactly know, but it's not without the discussion, that's for sure.
And without spoiling anything, the door is cracked open for...
It is cracked open. It is cracked open. Because, listen, there's a catalyst of these two guys.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the girl and the girlfriend, and that started the whole thing. So in some way it will be addressed, and it already has in a little bit. But
I thought one of the funniest scenes in the series so far was when you guys were talking about her and following her on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. The What's a Facebook? Yeah, Johnny Lawrence. And then we're scrolling through and we say, look at that guy, what a jerk. And he's like awesome looking.
Right. And of course you both agree,
Yeah, right, he's ugly.
what a thing I can't say on camera. Cobra Kai Never Dies is the name of this fan. Cobra Kai Never Dies, really you're asking a question of Daniel. Asks, are we going to see a fight between Daniel and Kreese?
Daniel and Kreese or Daniel and Johnny?
Kreese.
Wow. Like I said, it's all open season. I don't think that'll be the case, but God, I really don't know. That would be, I haven't thought about it. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. Mm-hmm. And that could be quite interesting and fun. You see, there's so much you could mine from this franchise. It's really cool. So now I'm thinking about that. I'll talk to the writers later.
I have to say, at this point, I would much rather see Daniel fight Kreese than Johnny.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd kind of like Daniel and Johnny to take it to Kreese.
Yeah, that could happen. That is not out of the realm of possibility down the line as well. Yeah. Because we're hearing a lot of that from the fans now, but not quite yet. We got some more mileage of rivalry.
Now, again, not to spoil anything about season 2, I will say that it's probably reasonable to say that it forces both of you to rethink the role of karate in your lives.
Yep.
So how did you feel about that, where they took the story in season 2? Did it surprise you that they went that far with it?
It surprised me. Listen, they've earned my respect, and they've earned the right to take. They see this whole what's the word I'm looking for? Tapestry? What's like
tapestry.
Everything with interwoven. They have this whole world. They know where they want the show to end. They haven't told anybody. I have my theory of what that is, and I'm not going to discuss it now. but how they're going to get there and where they're going to fit it in and what seasons. It's really and then what characters are available for them to explore. And as you cast, all of a sudden it takes you in different directions. Mm. You have a breakout character, an interesting character, you go in a different direction. So, it's all possible. Mm-hmm. It's all possible.
I think about those breakout characters, I like the way some of the characters have developed, surprisingly, like Hawk.
Hawk and Dimitri, I mean, it's
You wouldn't have expected Hawk to go where he
has
gone.
But when you look at his arc from the early episodes of season 1, mm-hmm. It's exciting to watch these young actors they're so proud of their characters. It's awesome.
And the young female fighting actresses, they can fight.
They are. Nobody's phoning this one in.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's phoning it in.
I got to ask you kind of a weird stardom thing for you. Do you know the Annie song, Ralph Macchio?
Yes.
How did you respond when you heard that?
There's another song like Bat for Lashes has some song. Daniel. It's all the same. This is my answer to all this stuff. Like when people say, well, what do you think about the theory that LaRusso was really the bully and Johnny Lawrence needs justice and the kick was illegal? What do you think of this song that was written by this? I think if I could make a movie in 1983 and in 2019 we could be talking about all these different things and people still writing music about it, it's as good as it gets.
Right.
It doesn't happen too often. It keeps the legacy alive of this movie, the story, this character, and I was the lucky guy who had the opportunity to play the part. That's how I look at it.
I just was checking out the lyrics to that Annie song thing. I wonder what his wife thinks of
Yeah,
this.
right, exactly.
Are you guys a go for season 3?
We're as much a go as being in conversation can be. It has not been officially announced or greenlit, but it's feeling very positive. I'm hoping very, very soon. They might want to wait till season 2 drops just to see that. But you've seen season 2. We can't say too much, but I think the fan base will revolt if it ends there.
Yeah, I think once fans see the end of season 2, they're going to renew season 3.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Fans will go more of this. All right. You've answered all of my questions about Cobra Kai, and I have to confess I was really surprised by how layered it was. I was impressed by that.
Cool.
But now I'm going to hit you with a lightning round.
Oh man.
All right. So get ready, because if you give wrong answers, then
and I
things
will.
fall from
And
the
I
ceiling.
will.
All right. One of my favorite references in Cobra Kai is that Game of Thrones thing where you guys are going back and forth about Game of Thrones. So, first, are you a fan of Game of Thrones?
I am. I'm not as well versed. I need my son here. He'd be able to ask me anything.
Well, he's not here to help
He's
you.
not here, so I'm gonna tank, and he's gonna
Neither
kill
he
me.
nor Miyagi can help you.
I don't know. Right.
All right. So the question is, who's going to win the Game of Thrones?
Oh man, I don't know. We have these theories. I don't know. Is Dragon Lady down? Cersei can't win. I mean, I don't know. I love them all. I want them all to live, except the White Walkers. I don't know. I really don't. I don't have enough. I just want it to keep going.
Well, under threat of a Johnny kick to the head, you had to pick one character.
Look at you pushing me now in the lightning round. Oh, the gloves are off in the lightning round.
Yeah.
Who's gonna win? Being from the LaRusso side, I'll tie it in, right? That's why I'm here. I'd like to see, Dragon Lady come through in the end.
All right.
Because we like her and Jon Snow, even though they're brother and sister or whatever the hell they are now.
On to the
Come
nephew.
on.
Yeah, but if you had an aunt who looked like that, you'd be probably tempted.
That's right.
So, what's the last show you binge watched?
Barry, or was it the Kominsky method, I think?
Method.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barry's great, isn't it?
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, Bill Hader's wonderful in that. And did you binge them because you just couldn't stop watching them, or because you felt like you had to get through them?
No, I had the time. I had the moment. When you have that much time, and I have mixed feelings about the binge watching thing. I do. I'm on this show currently called The Deuce on HBO. And I love that every Sunday night when I'm shooting Cobra Kai on location, every Sunday night I get to watch one episode of The Deuce, kick back with the Cobra Kai script on my lap, and I'm watching, and I can't watch the next episode because it doesn't come out for another week.
Right.
I kind of like this. There's a piece of me that misses that. So I like a little of both.
Little traditionalist.
It's nice to have both.
Which beautifully sets up the last lightning round question, which is, what classic TV show would you like to have been on?
I don't know if it's classic, although they would say so. But I remember in recent years, or maybe 10 years back, when Parenthood was on, Ray Romano came on, did a great role in that, and there was something about that show that I said, boy, I would love to be on that show. I just think my sensibilities and some of this stuff just felt right. I could go back and come up with, was it Friends, is it Seinfeld, Taxi, yes, and yes. But for some reason that just popped into my head.
That makes sense. Well, showrunners of Parenthood, you missed out. All right. Well, thank you for stopping by and answering all of our questions.
Oh, man, I had a great time.
Really, congratulations on Cobra Kai. It's good.
Thank you, man.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks, buddy.
To see this entire interview and other Emmy Contenders chats, please go to latimes.com.